name is Regan Bozman. I lead business operations at a company called CoinList. We build infrastructure for companies running token sales and help existing projects grow their communities, engage developers, and I'll be talking about engaging developers in the context of NFTs and gaming. So it's no secret that token sales, large companies with native tokens and a lot of money have been chasing developers for a long time, right? Companies like EOS are spending billions of dollars on ecosystem funds to basically incentivize building on top of their protocol. But I think it's actually almost as important or more in the context of NFTs. If you're building a company in the gaming space or integrating NFTs, your user experience is still going to be really far off from what a Web 2.0 product is today, right? Even the average iOS game on mobile is still more usable than the average NFT project today. And the reason that a lot of people highlight why NFTs in gaming could be really powerful actually all depend on other developers being engaged in a product, right? If you think about something like ERC 721 that allows really easy liquidity or the ability to trade assets across markets, that presumes that people have built markets for your assets, right? If you're building a game on top of Ethereum, like most people are today, that assumes that users are able to buy Ethereum, put Ethereum in an Ethereum wallet, and go through those steps in the funnel before they're ever able to use your product. And the interoperability element, right? The idea that you could take something like Fortnite skins in an NFT game and trade it across other platforms presumes that people have built other platforms that integrate with your product, right? All of these presume that developers are engaged and interested. And I think developer engagement can be a really powerful mode. I'm probably the first person today to talk about CryptoKitties, but if you look at what they've done, they were sort of one of the first games to really build a developer ecosystem. You see here they have a public API. They try to make it as easy as possible for other people to build games and use cases on top of them, and some of these were actually really successful, right? The Kitty Hats founders spoke today, or they're speaking later. Kitty Racing was featured in Quartz, which is a super mainstream publication, and you actually see those people then, all of the applications built on top of CryptoKitties, right, actually let CryptoKitties accrue value from that. They made it more powerful, and they created more reasons why you would want to own CryptoKitties, which drives usage of the game. At the same time, those developers are dependent on CryptoKitties, their APIs, and their infrastructure. And so you actually see a really powerful feedback loop where these developers are building infrastructure that helps the core CryptoKitties team, which makes the product more usable, which drives more users, and drives more developers, and so on. So what have teams tried before? The NFT space is still fairly nascent, but if you look back to 2015, large crypto platforms like Ethereum, EOS have thrown quite literally billions of dollars and a huge amount of resources at attracting developers to their protocols, right? They've done things like hackathons. So EOS probably spent low millions of dollars last year, holding about 5 hackathons all over the world. A lot of projects like 0x and Maker have set up grant programs where they'll give non-dilutive funding to developer teams that are building on top of their protocols. And then companies like EOS and Maker have actually set up ecosystem funds where they have some set amount of capital deployed to give to basically attract teams, mostly developers, to build on their protocol. But most of these don't make sense in the context of NFTs. Ecosystems and grant programs really presume that a team has a large war chest, which hasn't really been the case. And they're still really early and unproven. We spent a lot of time iterating on products at CoinList to help companies in the space engage developers. And I think there's sort of 3 things that we've seen actually work so far. So, all of the reasons people talk about why NFTs in gaming are so exciting, trustless trading, true digital ownership, these things don't really mean much to the average user, right? The average user doesn't care about these things. These may allow things that the average user cares about, right? If a game goes out of business, you still own your assets. But it's really on teams to explain that to end users and to developers. And so I've attached 2 pieces of content here. The first is from Loom, which is a layer 2 Ethereum scaling solution for games. And they created a really awesome article basically showing developers how to build a CryptoKitties-like game on Ethereum. It was a fairly technical piece. It wasn't accessible to a broad audience, right? But They care about developers. That's who they're trying to attract. And so they focused on that. The second example here is a piece from 0x, where they basically laid out like 20 use cases for building on top of the 0x protocol. And again, they're trying to target teams, people who want to build companies on top of 0x. So I think these both do a really good job of just like speaking to their core audience, and both of these were really widely shared. I think hackathons can be really powerful. These are screenshots of 2 of the past ETH Global hackathons, but Ethereum has done an unbelievable job at using hackathons to drive interest in building on top of Ethereum. I was at ETH Denver this weekend, and they had over 1,000 engineers from all over the world fly to Denver to compete for like not that much money, right? People came because they were really interested in learning and building on top of it, and a lot of other projects in the Ethereum ecosystem have set up bounties and prizes. You can see here examples of NewCipher and Maker in order to incentivize those teams to build on top of their protocol. Now, most NFT companies, like, you're not going to be able to recreate what Ethereum has today, right? But I think teams can actually use this in a really lightweight way, either hosting in-person meetups or doing online hackathons where things like gamification, getting some of your cool investors or advisors to like talk to a technical audience can actually do a lot to drive interest in building on a project. And then I think targeting early adopters is a really interesting mechanism. There are 2 examples here of OpenSea, which is a marketplace for non-fungible tokens. So the first is you have like the ticket for this event, and then the second is you have clothes you could buy at ETH Denver. Ticketing is a really interesting use case for NFTs, but it's not widely used, right? And there's no way that like Justin Bieber or some famous musician who's having a concert would like issue his tickets on NFTs, right? Just most people don't have Ethereum wallets. It doesn't make sense. But this is obviously like a conference that's excited about eating its own dog food. And so I think this is a really powerful way to show developers and other teams what's possible with NFTs. And so I think just building products for a crypto native audience is dangerous because that market's not that big yet. But I think to the extent that you're able to prove out use cases with people who really understand what you're doing, it actually makes it a lot easier to pitch developers in the future. And so I think in terms of like selling developers on NFTs, selling developers, they're a really hard audience, right? If you're a talented software engineer, you could literally make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year at Google or Facebook, or in the context of gaming at somewhere like Blizzard or Activision, right? So you need to sell developers on why they should be excited to come build in NFTs, right? The other downside is right now someone building a game for iOS or something like PlayStation, that audience is still like way bigger than it is for the average NFT game. And so I think here, like all of the reasons why people are excited, you actually really need to like translate it and break this down and sell developers on why building these products is exciting, right? If you're a software engineer and you've been building like siloed games, something like StarCraft, right? A lot of these people have probably thought about like how cool it would be if that currency, those skins, those characters were like tradable to another ecosystem. If you could take assets like skins and like trade them with anyone on Earth and allow these really dynamic marketplaces to exist, which haven't for most games, that's really compelling and potentially could drive a massive audience. But none of this is obvious, and it all requires selling developers on it. The one last thing I'd highlight is, I've talked to a lot of well-funded teams in this space who've spent a lot of money aimed at bringing developers into their ecosystem. And most of them are really not doing a job at all at like quantifying whether or not this is successful. And so these are a couple of ideas I've seen people do in terms of just like quantifying developer outreach.